After the atomic bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, the world has never been the same. The catastrophic consequences of nuclear weapons witnessed in Japan led to a single conclusion: such weapons should never be used again. For almost 80 years, the world adhered to this consensus. The so-called nuclear taboo became somewhat of an unbreakable vow, a silent yet resounding pledge to humanity's survival. That is until Russia's President Vladimir Putin demonstrated a troubling willingness to breach this nuclear taboo. The potential use of nuclear weapons in conflict has been a pressing concern since the beginning of Russia's violent invasion of Ukraine. Chief among those watching intently is the group that can actually do something about a potential nuclear war, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. Though NATO has long been acutely aware of the nuclear threat, 2022 marked the first time in decades that meetings were actively held to discuss the unthinkable, a nuclear conflict. So, what will NATO do to stop the most devastating weapon the world has ever seen? Broadly speaking, the stages in NATO's nuclear plan can be broken into three categories. Nuclear war is just a hypothetical possibility. Nuclear war is looming on the horizon. Nuclear war is here. Stage 1. Enhanced deterrence. Under Category 1, the first stage is enhanced deterrence. This isn't surprising to anyone who has followed NATO's nuclear stance over the years, as nuclear deterrence has always been a core component of the alliance's strategy. Although critics feared this approach might lead to nuclear proliferation, NATO has always been clear about one thing: as long as nuclear weapons exist, it will remain a nuclear alliance. Nuclear deterrence is a strategy aimed at preventing an adversary from using nuclear weapons by convincing them that the costs and risks of such an action outweigh any potential benefits. NATO has been employing this strategy since its inception, essentially created to counter the Soviet Union's military threat. Interestingly, the Soviet Union test-fired its first nuclear device some 5 months after NATO was established. During the Cold War, NATO's nuclear strategy was based on pure nuclear deterrence, dissuading the Soviet Union from launching any attacks on NATO territory. However, there were also proponents of a mixed nuclear and conventional deterrence strategy, where major acts of aggression would be met with an all-out nuclear response. For minor aggression, conventional defense methods would be employed. NATO's flexible response strategy, adopted in December 1967, dictates that any aggression short of a general nuclear attack is to be responded to at the level of force at which it was initiated. NATO retains the option to introduce nuclear weapons into the conflict first if the initial response fails to contain the aggressor. Essentially, NATO has the green light to deliberately escalate virtually any conflict to general nuclear war if circumstances warrant such action. To ensure readiness, NATO began stockpiling nuclear weapons in Europe. By the 1970s, there were roughly 7,400 nuclear weapons stored across Europe, including nuclear-armed missiles, surface-to-air missiles, air-to-surface missiles, air-delivered gravity bombs, anti-submarine depth bombs, special atomic demolition munitions, and nuclear artillery shells. Another prominent strategy under the first category of NATO's nuclear war plan is increased military readiness. The goal is to build and maintain military capabilities so that a would-be aggressor is dissuaded from attacking due to the sheer force of the potential counterattack. Throughout history, NATO tailored these efforts to the Soviet Union's actions. Today, NATO faces Russia, continuing to strengthen its deterrence posture and boost military readiness. NATO doesn't possess any nuclear weapons or military forces directly. The organization's military readiness relies on the nuclear force of the US, with France and the UK also playing important deterrent roles. Having multiple nuclear forces under its wing is a huge plus for NATO, complicating the adversary's calculations. NATO's nuclear strategy also includes nuclear sharing arrangements and regular exercises. Nuclear sharing arrangements ensure military support for NATO's nuclear capabilities and demonstrate unwavering unity among member states. NATO conducts regular nuclear exercises to ensure the credibility, effectiveness, and security of its nuclear deterrent missions. Chief among them is Steadfast Noon, an annual exercise involving nuclear-capable fighter aircraft simulating nuclear strike missions. When a nuclear war might be too close for comfort, NATO employs strategies under the second category. Stage 1 involves recognizing imminent danger. In 2022, it was concluded that Russia might be planning to employ tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Urgent meetings were held to discuss the harrowing reality of nuclear brinkmanship. After recognizing the threat, Stage 2 involves communicating warnings. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley, and CIA Director William Burns all contacted their Russian counterparts to communicate the severe consequences of nuclear use. NATO also enlisted the help of non-allies, such as India and China, to join efforts in discouraging a nuclear attack. If nuclear weapons are used, NATO's response remains intentionally vague, adhering to a policy of strategic ambiguity. This allows policymakers to decide how to respond on a case-by-case basis. However, in a nuclear conflict, NATO's Nuclear Planning Group, NPG, would play a crucial role in determining the course of action. Possible actions include striking Russian forces and equipment in Ukraine, sinking the Black Sea Fleet, cutting all communications with electronic warfare, and arranging a comprehensive cyber blackout. While NATO's nuclear war plan is designed to ensure readiness and deterrence, it is hoped that the final strategy remains forever unused. The alliance continues to navigate the complex and dangerous landscape of nuclear deterrence, maintaining vigilance in the face of evolving threats from nations like Russia, North Korea, and Iran. The hope is that through strategic planning, deterrence, and international cooperation, the world can avoid the devastating consequences of nuclear conflict and preserve peace and security for future generations.